Welcome to Satsang. So today I've been asked to talk about trust. And trust is one of those things that's not really that well understood, because we trust if circumstances are a certain way. But that's not really trust. That's actually a business deal of some kind. And as a result of it being a business deal, there is no surrender in it. True trust is on par or equivalent to surrender. It's stepping into the unknown without knowing, without any contraction, without any resistance, without any reservations. And in a lot of ways, when we were little kids up to probably the age of 4, we lived in trust because we were stepping into the unknown. Finding ourselves without a thought, really, just playing. But as we grew up, we learned that the world was more dangerous than we had realized. And so everything became a business deal. I will trust you if you are like this. That's not trust. And so in going into higher consciousness, there comes a point where you realize that all the projections forward that we have that give us a sense of safety are actually not real, and in fact dream, and are in the way of us going further into higher consciousness. And so what's required is to drop all of those projections that make us feel safe, because there is no safety in projection. Really, it's just a dream. And once we drop the projections and we start living truly in the moment rather than in projections and memory, we find that we are in a state of trust, because we're not playing it safe. We're not trusting because there's some kind of projection or understanding that we're going to be safe. So the higher in consciousness you go, the more trust is actually required, because that's what's required. The sage is stepping into the unknown with every step, like a little kid again, in trust. And so it comes back to the survival mechanism and how we're operating that. The survival mechanism dictates that we don't trust, that we make sure we're safe. And that pretty much keeps us in lower consciousness. Whereas if we're going to higher consciousness, trust is actually required. We have to be able to step into the unknown without looking. In beingness, it's exactly how it is. There's no such thing as trust, because it's beyond the mind. But for awareness to stay aware of itself, the mind needs to be in a state of trust. Because if it's not in a state of trust, and if it's contracting and resisting and trying to work things out, awareness comes back to the mind, particularly in the early stages. And so this state of trust is a requirement. It's very similar to surrender. And it's up to you to do something about it, to let go enough, to accept enough for trust to occur. So the sage will say, well, I trust. But that means the sage trusts whatever happens is what's meant to happen. Not, I trust that I'm not going to get ripped off, or trust that you're not going to lie to me, or trust that you're not going to steal from me. But the trust that whatever happens is meant to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. And in this state of trust, there is deep relaxation of the mind, because it's not trying to protect itself. It's not trying to be careful. It's trusting. Now, this is really totally against the survival mechanism of the mind. And it's why it is so difficult, because the mind is really just a survival mechanism. But because we're intelligent, we can learn to trust. We can learn to drop the projections, drop our understandings, drop everything, and just be okay with what is, trusting that it's what's meant to be, otherwise it would not be happening. Another way of putting that would be, such is life. This is unusual. You don't find this in people in lower consciousness because it's against survival. There's just no way. You start finding people who are actually trusting life, who understand that whatever's happening is meant to be happening, and you're talking about people who are reasonably advanced in their spiritual search. Nothing happens that is not perfect. And we are not programmed to believe that. We're programmed to believe in right and wrong, good and bad. And of course, because of that, we can't trust, because we believe in bad. And we have to protect ourselves from it. But trust is a requirement for higher consciousness. To step into the unknown without looking. To be okay with whatever is appearing, knowing full well it's meant to be happening, otherwise it would not be happening. This is a state of trust. And this is one of the goals of the seeker, to be able to operate from this state of trust, which allows the mind to be very, very relaxed, because there's nothing going that's wrong. It's all okay. Everything's okay. Whatever it is, it's okay. And so the sage doesn't have expectations that contract them either. Why would they? Because whatever happens is meant to happen. Doesn't mean that they don't try to do things, make things happen, make the world work in a way that's suited. But they trust that whatever occurs is meant to happen, otherwise it would not be happening. And so let go, let go, let go, and trust. Any questions? Any statements? Any challenges to this teaching today?
First question is as follows. What does it look like to trust?
It looks like a 2-year-old running around a house, not projecting anything into the future whatsoever and banging into things. Trust. It looks like non-reactivity. Someone who's in trust is not reacting. They may be responding, but they're not reacting, because they know that everything that's happening is meant to be happening. And so they're at ease, they're relaxed, they're cool, they're calm. They're not shaken by the world, because they're living in trust.
The next question is as follows. I find it hard to trust any person in authority. Why might this be?
I had that problem when I was younger, mainly because the people who were in authority in my younger years were corrupt, and they misused their power. And so I found it hard to trust them, and I found it hard to trust authority for a long time, until I realized it was just me operating out of my own wounding, and that not everybody in authority is corrupt. So people who have what's called authority trips quite often have authority trips because some authority in their younger life, whether it was a parent, a teacher, or someone else, misused that power and made them feel less than, or made them feel hurt in some way. And so they lost trust in authority, and they've carried that through into their later years. It's very detrimental to carry it through into later years, to not trust authority, because then you actually have a trip with your boss, you have a trip with the police, you have a trip with anybody who's in authority, and it just doesn't make your life peaceful. It makes your life stressful. It's worth having a look at if you do have authority trip with anyone who's in power. What is it inside of you that is hurt? What is it inside of you that is damaged? Why are you reacting in the way you're reacting? It gives an invite to have a look, an invite to investigate your own mind.
Why do I need to trust to be able to let go?
Well, you can't let go if you can't trust, can you? That's not really possible, because letting go is you don't know what's happening next if you let go. Just practice let go. You're holding on to something, practice letting go. You're holding on to an idea or a thought or a grudge or some story, let it go. Just practice let go. And if you keep practicing let go, you'll get left with nothing. And as soon as you hit nothing, you're in trust. Anything that we're holding on to would indicate that we're not into trust. So let go, let go, let go. That's the practice of letting go. The practice of accepting is also a way of letting go. But we're not good at it because we're not practiced at it. If you practice it, you'll get good at it. If you do not, you will not. How good are you at letting everything go in the moment? Can you let it go in less than a second? And can you pick it up again in less than a second? How much is your mind able to trust? Or is it not at all? Let go, let go, let go, and see. Existence is the way existence is. It doesn't get nicer because you trust. It doesn't get safer because you trust. It's just that if you're into higher consciousness, you've got to get out of your head. And while we're not trusting, we're in our heads in a lot of ways because we're trying to work out what's safe. We're being careful. We're not relaxed. Trust just allows us to deeply relax, walk through the world without a care.
How can you trust that things are meant to be the way they are, even if they're negative?
Well, they wouldn't be happening if they weren't meant to happen. How deep is your understanding? How deep is your insight? You see, whatever happens in the world is meant to happen, otherwise it wouldn't happen. That's trust. But it's more than that. It's a deep understanding of life. What's happening is meant to be happening, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. So how do I know there's supposed to be murders in the world? There's supposed to be wars in the world? There's supposed to be famine in the world? Because it's happening. I'm a realist, not an idealist. It's happening. And that's what is. And if you can be okay with what is, you can be very relaxed in the world. If you can't be okay with what is, you can't be relaxed. And as a result, you keep yourself locked in lower consciousness, because it really is about having a relaxed mind to go to higher consciousness. An uptight mind keeps awareness locked on it in lower consciousness, usually in some story of right, wrong, good, bad. Whatever's happening in the world has been happening for millions of years, and it's meant to be, otherwise it wouldn't be so. The moment you start labeling it, the moment you start resisting it, you're contracting, you're taking yourself into lower consciousness. It is just the way it is. Neither good nor bad, it's just the way it is. This is trust.
The following question is from a viewer. Do we need to find out for ourselves what let go feels like? Will we know it when we do trust?
If you're in a state of let go or a state of trust, you're in a state of ease. You're not uptight. You're fresh. There's nothing bothering you. You're relaxed. If you're not in a state of trust, well, you could say there's a certain level of the opposite. There's a certain tension in you. There's a certain holding on or holding against because you're not in a state of trust. And so you come around someone who's awake and you'll find that they're totally relaxed inside. They're totally open inside. That would have happened before enlightenment. Otherwise, they would never have been enlightened. Their mind has let go. It's in a state of trust. Another way of putting that is their mind's in a state of surrender. Same.
This is a follow-up question from a viewer. I am older now. I can see letting go is more difficult now.
Okay, that's a statement, not a question.
Do you have anything to say about letting go being more difficult with age?
Trying to change anything about the psyche is more difficult as we get older, because what we do is done over and over and over again, so it becomes hardwired. And the longer we leave programs in our mind, the harder it is to change them. The psychiatrists and psychologists reckon that by the age of 7 to 9, we've developed most of our default patterning. And it's relatively easy to change before that. But after that, because it's repeated over and over again, it is hard to change. To change it, to create a default pattern in the mind, psychologists say it takes around about 2 years. There is a good chance it takes a couple of years to actually change it, to alter it. And that would be by putting something different in that has been done before, continuously for that period of time. And so it is hard for people to change anything. And as we get older, things like trust are harder to do because we have a default pattern of not trusting. But if we practice anything at any age, we can change the way our minds operate. And a mind that is prepared to let go, that is prepared to trust, is a mind that will support higher consciousness, will support enlightenment.
When you talk about things happening because they're meant to be happening, does this mean you trust that everything happens for a reason?
No. Then I'd probably want to look for the reason. And the reason that we want to look for a reason is we want to know. And the reason we want to know is because we want to control. And a part of trust is letting go of control. The truth is we have very, very little control anyway, but we like to think we have control. The sage lives in a state of let go, hands off the wheel of the car. Bit dangerous, but in a state of let go. Everything that's happening is meant to be happening, otherwise it would not be happening. Any resistance that's put into that is unlikely to change it. It's just going to hurt you. How surrendered do you want to be? How conscious do you want to be? How high in the game of higher consciousness do you want to go? anything that contracts you, anything that brings resistance into you is in the way. It's an obstacle. And you can either remove that obstacle or you leave it in place. But if you leave it in place, it's probably going to contract you and take you into lower consciousness sooner or later. You want to fly high, you let go of everything.
How can I let go of control and trust?
Well, one answer is don't. See where that gets you. Don't let go. Don't trust. See where that gets you. You've probably been doing that your whole life. Where's it got you? Try something different. Human beings are all controllers. We control to survive. We're programmed to be controllers. We're programmed, absolutely programmed to control our environment so we survive. This is why higher consciousness and enlightenment is so rare, because you have to defeat the survival mechanism that keeps you locked in lower consciousness. As long as you're trying to control everything, you are locked in lower consciousness. Let go is the key. Surrender is the ultimate key. It's the ultimate doorway to enlightenment. But surrender means you don't take anything with you. Not even a belief, not even an idea. Let go and see. It's up to you.
Can I have gratitude for life even when it isn't going the way I want?
Your voice is chopping out, so you've got something on your recording device that is making your voice chop out when you talk. So I didn't pick up the sentence properly.
Can you hear me now?
I could hear you before. Your voice is chopping out. Some words aren't coming through.
Okay. The question again. How can I have gratitude for life?
Okay, you chopped out again. I didn't hear you. You've got some kind of noise reduction thing on your mic probably, and it's actually cutting you out. Try again.
Okay. Is this better?
I don't know. Try it again.
How can I have gratitude for life even when it isn't going the way I want?
That worked. How can I have gratitude for life even though it doesn't work? Why do you want to have gratitude for life in the first place? Why not just be? You see, I'm neither positive nor negative. I just am. Why do you want to be this way or that way? Why do you want to have gratitude or ingratitude? Why do you? That's still mind stuff. What about just being, just here, just now, without anything? It's brilliant. We're called human beings, but unfortunately, most humans are human doings. They're not human beings. They're human doings. They're constantly doing something. You want to do gratitude. How about just being? You're just here. You are. That's better.
Next, we have Satya, who would like to ask a question.
Hi, Satya.
Hello, Vishrant. Hello, Vishrant.
Hello.
Vishrant, what is the importance of trust in between teacher and disciple?
What is the what? Sorry, Satya?
I mean, what is the importance? What is the important in between about trust in between spiritual teacher and disciple?
No, okay, so here's the thing. The student goes looking for a teacher and finds a teacher and then watches the teacher to see if the teacher is walking their talk. Once the student or the disciple sees that the teacher is walking their talk, He then trusts the teacher. If he can't trust the teacher, he needs to go and find another teacher, because the teacher is going to take our disciple into the unknown. And if there's no trust there, that's not possible. Trust is an absolutely essential ingredient in the relationship between the disciple and the master. If the trust is not there, it is not going to happen. Does that answer that, Satya?
Yes, Vishrant. But with trust, disciple need love also and towards master.
Did you say love?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Trust will do. Love actually enables the trust, but trust will do. You see, it's really quite simple. It's like the master is going to take you into the unknown. Now, the survival mechanism of the mind isn't going to like that one bit, because the unknown presents danger. So it actually throws up fear. If the disciple can't trust the master, the master can't take the disciple into the unknown. And so it's a waste of time. The relationship's not going to work. And this is why it's important when you find a teacher to check out how they're operating. Are they actually walking their talk, or are they fraudulent? And this is very important, because there's a great deal of fraudulent teachers out there. Find someone who's walking their talk, then you have to trust them. If you can't play. You've ruled yourself out of the game of higher consciousness.
Okay, Vishrant, thank you. I have another question, if you allow me to ask.
Yes.
Vishrant, humans, they know a day will come, they'll die. But till now, why there is a fear, especially for the seekers, why there is a fear of death over there? And because the person he knows he's going to die, a day will come. But till now, there is a fear over there, and it goes sometimes a bit difficult to go beyond that fear. So can you just bring light on this, please?
Yeah. Look, the survival mechanism dictates that we stay alive, and it's primal, it's primitive, and it's in all human beings. We're programmed to survive. We're programmed to fight to survive. We're not programmed to die. And one of the ways that we are protected from death is through fear. Fear is simply a defensive mechanism that protects us from danger, including death. For someone to overcome that, they had to have surrendered their life. To overcome the survival mechanism, there needs to be unconditional surrender. And in unconditional surrender, fear drops. But that's because the person's already ready to die. And that's unusual, because it does go against the survival mechanism that is in all human beings. But to go higher and higher in consciousness, we can't serve fear. So we have to surrender to whatever we're frightened of, whatever that might be. And in the surrendering, we can overcome fear, but only in the surrendering. You can't overcome fear through resistance, because resistance keeps you in lower consciousness. If you're into higher consciousness, it can only happen through surrender. You allow the worst to occur. So the sage is already dead. Dead man walking, dead man talking, because they have defeated the survival mechanism. It is dropped. There's no fear after that. It's gone. But fear is part of every human being's psyche. It's there for survival, and it's hard. But that's why higher consciousness is so hard and enlightenment is so hard. The survival mechanism of the mind has to be defeated. And it can't be defeated through resistance. It can only be defeated through surrender.
Okay, Vishrant, thank you. But is there any easy way to tackle this fear?
The fear of death. Yeah, look,
Yes.
I had to deal with the fear of death when I was quite young, because I was a diver. And I used to dive in waters where there was sharks because I was a hunter. And I was quite frightened of sharks. And I realized that my fear of death, of being mauled to death, was actually inhibiting my sport. Because I didn't, if you actually serve the fear, you won't go, you won't get in the water. And so I discovered that if I was prepared to let, in my mind at least, let the sharks eat me, kill me, the fear dropped away. In other words, surrendering to what I was frightened of disabled the fear. And so that's when I started practicing dying. When I was a diver, I just made it okay to be eaten. I made it okay to be killed by sharks. And in that way, I could keep diving because I was diving just about every weekend at the other side of Rottnest Island, where there are quite a lot of sharks. And that continued on into other things. I found also in martial arts, because I did martial arts, full contact martial arts, and the fear of death or the fear of being mutilated or hurt was an inhibitor. It actually stopped me from being my best. And so I made it okay to die in martial arts. I made it okay to die, to be mutilated or hurt. And in that, the fear dropped. And then when I got a little older, I was into racing motorbikes and rallying cars, and the same deal, because it's dangerous sports. And in playing rugby, the same deal. I did that for 15 years. And there was always the threat of death or the threat of being hurt because you're in a dangerous sport. And in making it okay to die, in making it okay to be hurt, the fear of death was overcome. Does that make sense?
Yes, Vishrant. So, Vishrant, and there is one more thing also. If we trust on God, or if we trust on our spiritual teacher, so will it be helpful to tackle our fear in our spiritual way?
When you when I started to find my spiritual teachers and I got to look in their eyes, I realized that it was going to be death. The thing that wanted to be enlightened, the thing that wanted to get free, had to die to play the game. And so in the initial stages, I experienced terror sometimes, because that was a survival mechanism coming up to protect me from where my master was taking me, into the unknown, into the oblivion. But I knew the deal. I knew the deal. I knew that I was not going to survive as an I. And I made that okay.
Okay. Thank you, Vishrant.
The following question is from a viewer. We hear the terms master and or teacher used for awakened beings on the spiritual path. Is there any difference?
Depends. If someone's awake, they're a master. They're not a master of other human beings. They're a master of themselves. They've mastered their own mind. Otherwise, they wouldn't be awake. You see, if you can surrender unconditionally, if you can keep your mind absolutely quiet without effort, you've mastered your mind. And so, from my perspective, a master or a spiritual master is someone who has mastered themselves, not other human beings, just themselves. But because they've mastered their own mind, they can then teach that. Someone who's a teacher who hasn't mastered their own mind cannot teach it because they don't know how to do it themselves. If you come to a master who has mastered their own mind, they can show you how to master yours because they know what the game is. They know the traps. They know the ins and outs of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have mastered their own mind. There are other connotations about being a master, spiritual master, but I don't get into them. I don't buy any of that stuff. I just buy the mind mastery stuff. You've mastered your mind, you can keep it still for as long as you like. If you haven't mastered your mind, it's like a monkey. It just keeps talking to itself. It doesn't stop. It goes here, it goes there, it goes everywhere. Someone who's mastered their mind is a true master. and they can teach you how to master your mind because they know how. There's a difference between a teacher and a master. Sometimes anyone who's enlightened is called a spiritual master. Depends on which school you go to. From my perspective, there is no superior, there is no inferior. Everybody is a Buddha. Everybody is a Buddha. Some don't know, that's all, because awareness is not aware of itself. To set up a system where there are people that are superior and people who are inferior is a contradiction to truth. We are all one.
Did you find it easy to trust your teachers?
Yes. A lot of my teachers in the early years had faults, and I could see them. I could see the faults. But I could also see that they were further ahead than me in certain aspects, a long way ahead in certain aspects. And so I trusted them because I trusted that they had got somewhere that I hadn't got, and that in their presence and through their efforts, I could actually go further. And so I did trust my teachers. I've had a lot of teachers, originally starting off in personal growth when I was 19, and then hitting Osho Rajneesh when I was 28. And I found that trust was essential if I was going to actually get anywhere with these people. Without trust, all you're doing is questioning everything constantly. I remember one many years ago, I had this guy come into Satsang, and he wanted to find faults in me. And so he kept a diary of every day. He came to Satsang every day for a year, and he kept a diary of different things that I did and I didn't do. And at the end of the year, I didn't know he was keeping the diary. No one did. And at the end of the year, he stood up and he said, I've been keeping a diary for a year now, and I've had trouble. I haven't found a fault yet. And it's like, really? You wasted a whole year being with me, looking for faults? How foolish of you. When you're with someone who's awake, if you don't trust, you can't get anywhere. You've wasted your time here. Oh, and that's not to say I'm not faulty. I'm definitely faulty. All human beings are faulty. Can't not be. We've all been brought up with programs that are broken. Everyone's faulty, and that's okay. The moment we actually start putting ourselves down in any way, shape, or form, we're hurting ourselves. It's always best to be our own best friends.
I've heard some teachers say to trust in God, but tether your camel. What does this mean?
Well, I don't have a camel. It's just a certain level of wisdom, you know. You don't go down to the nightclub area and park your car and leave the keys in the ignition with your window open unless you want your car stolen. And so you trust that the car will get stolen. You're not deluded into thinking that somehow it's going to be there. And so there's a misunderstanding of trust there. So when I go out of the house, I lock the house because I trust that if it's not locked, someone might break in and steal things, and I don't particularly want that to occur. But that really doesn't have much to do with the type of trust that I'm talking about. You see, if someone did break in and did steal the goods, that would be what's meant to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so. That's trust.
What does trusting yourself look like?
It looks like being completely relaxed and completely confident in everything you do because you trust yourself. Look at what a way to look at it better is, what does it look like when you don't trust yourself? Where's your confidence then? Probably non-existent. Someone who trusts themselves is confident in what they do, confident in the world. They trust themselves. When you trust that everything that happens is meant to happen, otherwise it wouldn't be happening, you can be very relaxed. You can be very confident. Up to you. Your lack of trust, have a look at what that does. See, by examining the mind, we get to see it all. We get to see everything. What is it like when you don't trust? What is it like for you when you don't trust? And what is it like for you when you do trust? Examine your own minds and find out.
How do I trust but not be naive?
Naive basically means that you don't really know what's happening. You're ill-informed as to what's going on. And true trust is irrelevant. That's irrelevant to true trust. Even if you don't know what's going on, you trust that everything that's happening is meant to be happening, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. And so naivety doesn't help if you're trying to operate in the material world with other human beings. And if you do trust, you may get ripped off. But if you do, that's what's meant to happen. You see, you could say that's fatalistic, and it probably is, but that's how I live. I trust that everything that happens is meant to happen, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. Just feel the rest in that, feel the peace in that, and then look at the opposite and feel the disturbance in it. If you're interested in higher consciousness, find a way to trust.
How can you develop trust when your caregivers as a child were untrustworthy?
Well, that was probably a long time ago. You don't have to bring them into the picture. I had a pretty rough upbringing. A lot of misuse of power by authority figures in my life, but I trust. All you got to do is be willing to trust. All you got to be willing to do is let go. Be okay with what is. It's up to you. If you don't want to be okay with what is, you don't have to be. No one's going to make you. I just was interested in higher consciousness. I wasn't interested in staying in a stressed out, contracted, resistant mind. My interest was beyond that. If you can't trust, you're going to get stuck in the head, in the matrix. You got to let go. That's the deal. There is no other deal. You don't get to make the deal. The deal's already there. You got to let go. You got to trust. Or stay stuck. That's the choice. And it's your choice.
The way I am with people can differ depending on their social positions, such as if they're a CEO of a company or a janitor. How can I remain equally open to both?
Equally open to the CEO or the janitor? How about loving them both? You see, this is the most magical thing that we can have in our lives, love. Because in love, we're open to everything. As a matter of fact, without openness, we probably wouldn't be perceiving love. And so the way of the heart demands that we stay open. Otherwise, we don't perceive love. And if we're open and we're perceiving love, we love the CEO and we love the janitor equally. And so we're open to both. Love is beautiful, but it does have a condition. And that is that the mind is open, not defended, not closed. So you want to be open to everybody, no matter what their position in life is. That's beautiful because you're going to find that you love them. Up to you. I love everyone. And that doesn't just mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. Openness facilitates that. And it's up to you. You're the one that supplies the openness or supplies the defensiveness and closure. You're the creator of your reality. What reality are you creating?
The next question is from Kalimba.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hi, Kalimba.
I just wanted to make a statement, actually. Somebody asked a question about tether your camel, and you explained it pretty well about being practical, but I remember Osho talked about this story, and apparently it was a Sufi mystic who was traveling around, and one of the people looking after him was the guy who was supposed to look after the camels. Anyway, he got so spaced out that one day he decided not to tether the camels, and the master said, "Where's the camel?" "Oh, I didn't tether it." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, you said trust in Allah." He said, "Yes, trust in Allah, but tether the camel."
Yeah, I remember Osho saying that too, Kalimba. It's a beautiful story. It's just that I've never had a camel.
Well, say tether your Lamborghini and don't leave the keys in it.
No, I never had a Lamborghini either, but I had a Porsche.
Thanks, mate.
Don't go anywhere, Jess Kalimba. It's always good to talk to you. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you very much. And
I
you
love
start my day really beautifully.
I love sharing the old Osho stories with you as well, because like you, I was a lover of Osho. I loved him to bits, and I still love him to bits.
No, absolutely. I think I probably told the story when I was a hippie in Nimba and I was into the I Ching.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'd been touched by Osho, and I'd been thinking maybe I should, I don't know. And I threw an I Ching, and I'll never forget it. And I still get a tingle when I tell this story. I threw the I Ching, and it said, "Decay, work on what has been spoilt. It is time to cross the great water and see the great man."
Aha. That
Can't be any more specific.
That was the invitation.
Yeah. And I never regretted it.
I had something different. I was in a group with Indivar, and it was a weekend group, and it was on the second day, and I just had this vision of a water tunnel, like a water pipe, a big water pipe.
Oh, right.
One that you could walk down because it was so big. And about 50 to 100 meters down, there was this little Indian man at the end calling me like this. And I don't have visions. I'm not the sort of guy who has visions. And I looked at this guy and I realized, hey, that's Osho down there. And so I took sannyas with Osho.
Oh, wow. Now, Indivar is quite amazing. I always remember. Oh, are you echoing there? Or I'm hearing an echo my end.
No, I'm not getting an echo at all.
Oh, okay. Well, Indivar once, when I was asking him about enlightenment, he said, "It's perfectly simple. When you go up to a door, take the handle in your hand. Feel the handle. Feel the temperature, the shape, and how hard it is. Turn the handle and feel the handle turning. Open the door and walk through. Turn round, take the handle, feel it. Push the door closed, listen. Turn the handle, feel it, and then that's enlightenment." In the present every moment.
Yeah, that's present moment awareness every moment. And that's actually true, because you can't be awake without awareness being aware of itself every moment.
Yeah.
But the door handle has nothing to do with enlightenment.
No, it's just a symbol.
It's just a symbol. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen Indivar for years. I'm probably 20 years.
Yeah, I think I saw him about 15 years ago when I was having problems with my previous relationship. And he was we saw him as a psychologist, and he's a lovely guy. I've always loved Indivar.
Well, I loved him so. I loved him a great deal, and I've named one of the sannyasins here after him. We have an Indivar in our group.
Oh, right, lovely.
We call him Indy.
Thank you very much, Vish.
Thank you, Kalimba.
The next question is as follows. I find myself feeling inferior or less than others. How can I stop comparing myself to others, neither feeling inferior nor superior, and trust that we're all the same?
So the question was how. So if you have low self-worth, you're probably feeling inferior in some way. And so the answer is to accept every part of yourself completely. Now that might be quite difficult for you to do, and you may need help with that. You may need to find someone who's experienced in counseling to help you with that. Maybe do some kind of regression work. But basically the bottom line is to learn to accept yourself totally, the good, the bad, and the ugly of you. And that takes a fair bit, but that is the foundation for higher consciousness, self-acceptance. If you're feeling inferior, you're not accepting yourself somewhere. Have a look. If you really want to get into the fast track of it, see if you can find someone who can help you, a counselor who can help you with this. This is the best advice I can give, because until you can accept yourself totally, you're going to have problems with higher consciousness.
I've heard it said that we're all the same at the core of our being. Does this mean that we are all born equal?
We're also all the same at the edge of our being. We're all the same all the way through. See, we're not a mind and a body. We are pure beingness, and we are all that. And we're all that now. Whether you realize that or not, that now or not, it's irrelevant. You are that. We are beingness. We are one. There is no lesser and no greater. We are one. This is just a spacesuit with an onboard computer that could be a little crazy, but it's not who we are. We are beingness. When that's aware of the mind becomes aware of itself, the mind perceives what we truly are, beingness.
I find my mind can lead me down the garden path in a downward spiral. How do I not trust my thoughts?
There is no garden path. There is no downward spiral. You're dreaming. Be here now. How can you trust your thoughts? Look, the game of higher consciousness is difficult because you're fighting against a survival mechanism that dictates you be careful. Unfortunately, the way we're careful is through fear. Fear makes us careful. And fear makes us not do this, not do that. And fear keeps us locked in a dream about what could go wrong and what could go right. It's difficult. You have to find a way to let go. You have to find a way to accept life as it is. And that is going to be completely up to you because nobody else can do it for you. If you let go, if you continue to let go, if you can accept life and continue to accept life, you can learn surrender. And surrender is the doorway to superconsciousness. Gautama the Buddha, the famous Buddha, sat under a Bodhi tree and surrendered. He didn't sit under a Bodhi tree and do anything else. He didn't sit under a Bodhi tree and meditate or self-inquire. He surrendered. And in that surrender, enlightenment occurred. Surrender is the doorway to enlightenment. But it's against our survival mechanism. So it needs to be practiced. And we practice surrender through the practice of acceptance and the practice of let go. I like the practice of openness. It's brilliant.
How do you rebuild trust with someone who has betrayed you?
Why do you need to rebuild it? Why don't you just trust that they're going to betray you again? You see, trust is not a business deal. It means you're okay. It means you're okay with whatever occurs. You're in a state of trust. You're still looking at trust as a business deal of some kind. I'll trust you if you behave yourself. No, no. Trust in a spiritual sense is being okay with everything as it is and knowing that it's meant to be this way, otherwise it wouldn't be so. Trust is the most beautiful thing if you can find a way, but it's so hard because it's against the survival. Whatever occurs, trust that it's okay, that it's meant to be. That doesn't mean you mightn't move to action to actually change things at some point. It doesn't make you ineffective as a human being, but it means that you walk through this world relaxed, cool and calm because you are in a state of trust. And that state of trust from the perspective of the mind will support enlightenment, will support higher consciousness. Our constant resisting life just creates suffering for ourselves. We are responsible for that also.
How can I let go and turn towards awareness while trusting that life will work out the way it's supposed to?
First of all, you can't turn towards awareness. That that's aware of the mind can turn towards itself. Self-inquiry can help with that. You can ask the question, who am I? And awareness can turn back to itself. That's a possibility through self-inquiry. But if you haven't got a mind that will support what has been found, well, it's not going to stay anyway. And this is one of the great mistakes with people who do self-inquiry. They think that self-inquiry alone will take them home. Not if you've got a mind that isn't going to support what you find. If you've got a mind that is going to contract every time it disagrees with life, awareness, even if it is aware of itself, is going to go back to that mind and pull itself away from itself, pull itself away from awareness or beingness. So a mind that supports enlightenment is a mind that is equanimous, a mind that doesn't constantly contract against life. And that's a mind that has actually been worked with. It's a mind that has actually been taken apart. It's a mind that's been surrendered. If your mind doesn't have the ability to surrender, there's not going to be any ongoing enlightenment. That's not possible. And so someone who's awake has a mind that doesn't contract, doesn't go into resistance, unless, of course, they've been awake for a great deal of time and just awareness becomes aware of itself, and it's like two magnets come together. And after a while, these magnets just won't pull apart. But in the early days of enlightenment, the early time of enlightenment, usually that awareness on awareness is fragile. And so the mind needs to be quiet. It needs to support what's been found. A mind that's going to contract every time it doesn't agree with life isn't going to support that. And so a surrendered mind, or a mind that is in trust, will support that.